And joining us now is Chilton III, the Republican and conservative candidate seeking the 115th district seat in the New York State Assembly. Welcome. We appreciate you being here.
Hey, thanks for having me. Appreciate that.
For voters who aren't familiar with you, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're running for the Assembly?
Sure. I've done a lot of jobs in my career. I built homes. I've worked at the ARC. I was a correction officer for a couple years. From ARC, I actually went to UPS, and I've been there for 21 years. I have 2 stepchildren and 1 daughter.
So you're from here, from Ellenburg Center,
I'm from
born
Ellenburg
and raised?
Center, yep. Lived in Clinton County all my life.
So why run for the Assembly?
Well, I feel like the average citizen really doesn't have a voice anymore. As someone that's out in the community every day talking to people door to door, I'm talking to all walks of life, and there's not too many citizens right now that feel like their voice is heard. I just feel like some of the ideas that we have are ideas that would kind of work for people, and I feel like Albany is kind of in a bubble sometimes, and I just think as an outsider, I think I would bring some new ideas to the table.
Let's talk about some of those ideas. What would you like to do in the Assembly? What would you like to
Sure. Well,
accomplish?
I'd like to start with education. I'd like to localize education. I'd like a system where our superintendents within our county and our county legislators get together, along with parent teachers organizations and various other parent organizations, create the curriculum right here in our own district. That way there's accountability, because that's what I see in government. There's no accountability for anything when it comes to our government. I want to be proactive and not reactive. I feel like government really doesn't do that. They're reactive. They throw a lot of money at issues and don't really solve the problem. We're problem solvers because I come from the private sector, and that's what we do. We solve problems. We get the job done, and that's what I want to do for the citizens of the North Country. We got to lessen regulation. We got to bring people back to New York, and the only way we're ever going to do that is to make it affordable for people to live in New York State. We want good paying jobs. We're never going to see good paying jobs unless we reduce regulation, lower taxes, make it friendly for the businesses. It's concerning. It's very concerning. I want to live here when I retire. The way it's going, I don't know if that's going to be possible, Tom. And I hear that a lot from people that have made good living in New York, can't retire here because of the regulation, the overtaxation. People don't even talk about lowering property tax in New York. I haven't heard really too many politicians that I've listened to talk about lowering the cost of everyday average citizens. Farming, another thing that we should really focus on. I consider it a national security issue that we don't grow our food at the local level. We should not be putting solar panels in fields that should be farmed. There's only so much land in the world.
And you talk about farms. Is the state doing enough to help the farmers? The farmers obviously facing a number of issues. They're facing taxes, they're facing low milk prices, they're facing a number of issues. Is the state doing enough to help the family farm?
I don't believe they are. We don't even sell our own farm products, to our schools, our prisons, our jails. I mean, we're buying it from wherever we can get it the cheapest or whatever. Our restaurants, I think, can prosper, selling good quality food that comes from our local farmer. And if our restaurants could serve this kind of food, people would come to the area just for the food, farm fresh food. It's outstanding stuff. It would help our farmers. It would help our restaurants, lowering costs, not having to put it on a truck to get here. That lowers cost. I mean, that's the biggest thing going right now when it comes to inflation. It's the cost of fuel. Everything needs to get on a truck to get here.
If you get elected to the Assembly and you head to Albany, what would be your first priorities?
Well, repeal HALT would be a big priority of mine. repeal bail reform, the green light law. A lot of these things are concerning. Doesn't make any community safer in New York State. It actually does the opposite.
You think bail reform was a mistake? They have made some fixes since passing it in 2019, but you still think that was a mistake?
Yeah, listen, our judges were discretion, they were doing the right thing. It takes away their discretion, which is their job. They use the discretion to interpret laws and make the determination, and that basically eliminates their discretion. If a guy, offends 3-4 times in one day, a judge can't make a choice to say, hey, listen, you're a problem, you need to go sit in jail for a little while. I think that's wrong.
What about the new gun law passed this summer, the new concealed carry law?
Absolutely terrible. I read the Constitution as it's written, and it says the Second Amendment shall not be infringed.
And I know a lot of Republicans, a number of people, even your opponent, criticized the law, especially for the expansion of the so-called sensitive areas where the law has been expanded, and having the Adirondack Park fall under those sensitive areas. I know that was, for a lot of people, left open to interpretation exactly what that meant for the entire 6 million acre Adirondack Park.
Yeah, no, there was a lot of confusion, and that's what Albany does a lot. They jam through these laws. I mean, they reconvened a special session just to violate our constitutional rights. I mean, think about that. I mean, these people take an oath to protect our constitutional rights, and that was a clear violation of it, in my opinion. Yeah, it's very concerning. We do live in the Adirondack Park, and you got people out here that don't know if they're breaking the law by, taking their gun for a ride to go to their favorite hunting spot. I mean, that's concerning. I mean, even the state police don't really know. There's some confusion, you know what I mean? There's some confusion with everybody. Even lawmakers are coming out, and I mean, these are the people that convene to pass this law. I mean, they should know what they're passing before they impose it on people.
The Supreme Court this summer overturned Roe v. Wade. Abortion remains legal in New York State. Governor Kathy Hochul has committed $35 million to expand capacity to cover abortion procedures for women who live in New York and cover expenses for out-of-staters who come to New York from states where abortion is now severely restricted or illegal. Should taxpayer dollars in New York be used to provide abortion services for women from other states?
No.
Last month, the administration okayed a plan to lower the farm worker overtime threshold to 40 hours a week over the next 10 years. Farmers say it'll raise costs and drive their farm laborers to other states. Governor Hochul says a new tax credit enacted in this year's budget will cover the cost of overtime for farmers. She and advocacy groups say farm workers should be granted the same rights as other workers in New York. Do you agree with that?
I would go to the farmers and kind of listen to them. I mean, that's the way I would operate, in all the fields. I'm not an expert in all the fields, and I would go to the people that are.
So go to the farmers and
absolutely, yep.
hear it from them.
Right. We should be going to all the, law enforcement, halt. They didn't even ask those folks, do you think this was a good idea? And they just shoved it down their throat, and now we can't even get COs to take the job. I mean, it's created a real crisis in our prison systems, and it's very unfortunate. These are the people that keep our community safe, and they're under attack.
And many people know the HALT Act, basically for segregation and solitary confinement, eliminated it, which puts corrections officers at risk.
At risk, right. Yeah, no, 100% it puts them at risk. There's some guys can slash an officer, and then 14 days later they're out in the general public again. That's very concerning to me.
The number of inmates incarcerated in state prisons is about half of what it was 20 years ago. Over the past several years, dozens of facilities have been closed in New York State, including the Clinton Annex in the 115th Assembly District a little more than a year ago. Prisons, as we know, are major employers in the North Country, but can you say no to consolidating prisons if there's been such a steep decline in the prison population?
That's a tough question. why is there a decline in the prison population? Are we being more lenient on things? I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of questions behind that answer, behind that question. You know, I have a lot of questions too. You know, I want to talk to the administrators in the Department of Corrections. I want to talk to law enforcement. I want to see what they're thinking, what they're seeing on the streets. You know, should we be prosecuting more crimes? You know, where are the problems? Mental health is a major issue. You know, I think that's the biggest pandemic in America, and we're not even talking about it like it's a pandemic.
Once these prisons have been closed, does the state have an obligation to find a new use for these prisons to help the communities that counted on those jobs for so many years?
I believe they do. You know, I'll just use an example of a prison that's close to me, Line Mountain. They wanted to repurpose that prison for a shingle company, but the APA came in apparently and said that it wasn't going to be good enough. I don't know why, environmentally not safe, but that would have created a lot of jobs, you know, and that's unfortunate.
There's a housing crisis in the North Country. Many locals looking to buy a home say they're being priced out of the market. Increases in rents are outpacing those for income. And with inflation, mortgage rates are soaring. There are new affordable housing projects like Harrison Place in Malone and Northwoods in Plattsburgh that are being built with the backing of millions of dollars in state funding. Are there enough of these affordable housing projects to help? And what do you think is the state's obligation to try to help with this housing crisis?
I know cost of living and rent and prices of homes is pretty high, and you know, and that's unfortunate because I mean that's the great American dream, is owning a home in America.
Does the state have an obligation to maybe help with funding for some of these projects?
I would say some communities that are low income and could use the help, absolutely.
Is the state doing enough to address the need to expand broadband in many of the rural communities that make up the 115th district?
No, the state passed a budget that basically prevented broadband from being strung on the wire, on the poles. They tried to create revenue off a budget, and that prevented utility companies from providing internet. And as taxpayers, in my opinion, we should already have that infrastructure. This is what we pay for. This is what we pay for, the infrastructure, our roads, our internet. You know, this is what our taxpayers go for, and not special interests. I find that's a big problem in New York State too. You know, we take care of a lot of special interest groups. The Buffalo Bills Stadium, just to give you one example of that. I mean, I'm sure he provides a lot of good jobs, but he didn't need taxpayer dollars to do that. I want to see the Buffalo Bills stay in New York just as much as anybody. But at what cost? You know, I mean, people are hurting out here. More money in people's pockets would be a lot better than a Buffalo Bills stadium.
Stephen Chilton III, thank you very much for taking the time to be with us. We appreciate it.
No, I appreciate the time. Thank you.